It's a very inexpensive way to change the outcome. Just make believe, right? And then run the experiment.
To a lot of people, the world that we're living in right now is a little chaotic,
Just a little, right?
Many of us are trying to, just a little, right? I think a little
Right.
maybe is a bit of an understatement given what's happening with, Ukraine, Russia, the COVID pandemic here that's been happening, over the last 2 years, edging towards 3 years now. How, as a scientist, as an inventor, how should we make sense of the world? I know you spend you do a bit of homeschooling with your children, right?
Well, let's use that as an example, right?
Yeah.
I would love for my daughters to learn Cantonese culture, traditional Chinese writing, and I would like to hire someone to do it so that I can continue to focus on myself, right? Say I want to do that. Where would I find this resource? Who would do that for me? And especially when I'm talking about the health show and all that, I want them to be healthy. So I want to hire someone who talks about the same recipes and the cooking and various things. Where do I find someone like that? So DNE does not exist, right? So then I get upset and I throw more money at the problem. It's not a problem that you can just solve. It's a paradox, right? You chose to have them in the United States of America. It's a different culture. You chose to be in Hong Kong. You know what happened in Hong Kong is that I would want to send them to the top schools and then have them train them, right? Because of the external pressures. And then you try to train them to answer the questions properly. What craziness is that? There's no answer to the question properly because, like you described, Aaron, the world's a total mess. Last year, if I told you that this year we are going to have the Russian-Ukraine war, you say, 講嘢? Really? No, that's not going to happen. Right? What craziness is that? Or if a few years ago I tell you that we're going to have another pandemic. By the way, I did say that in a movie.
You
right?
did say that.
Yeah.
You already predicted that almost 10 years ago,
Yeah,
right?
I did say that 10 years ago, and I'm going to say it now. In the next 10 years, we're going to have another pandemic because it won't even take 10 years. Did you know that we have another situation? If you were a chicken right now, if you were a chicken, you would know what season this is. This is the avian flu season, 2003 SARS, right now in March. So if you bring your chickens outside, they will become infected with the H5N6, not the N1, not the H5N1, the H5N6. And I have chickens. And in the farmer group plus scientist, me, we talk about things like this. And so we know better. It's not visible to the public eye, the civilian eye, right? Yeah. And if you're in the Navy or Army and you have MREs, meals ready to eat, you would then know the code of the acronym is meals ready to explode because it gets stuck inside of you and causes severe constipation so that you have to chug down a whole bottle of olive oil. Well, if you live like them, you live through that other lens. So I want to change the lens, just like, this lens here, right? With the camera. It's definitely better than the other lens, but only when you compare them side by side. No comparison, you have no idea. This is just the lens. And so you get used to that lens. I wanted to look at through the lens of my children, my two daughters. And as I got more interviews and opportunities and these talk shows, I started changing it, just like that Crazy song. And I started doing it for them. It became a show for them to watch. And forget about the other audience, right? No, I completely included everybody. And I said, all right, that can help their Guangdonghua, their Cantonese, right? Their culture. And it's funny because they know already when they were 2, right? Dad couldn't read or write, but he could speak. And if he's willing to do that, then, let's say I was gone tomorrow, right? Whenever that is, They can use this stuff and watch it over and over again. I don't even have to self-record these stuff. It's all self-recorded, right? Your interview will become part of the things they watch. And it is just changing out that lens and realizing, hey, camera, Canon, right? Let me just swap out the 1545 millimeter with the 50 millimeter with the 100 millimeter, right? Whatever it is, change out that lens. It's like that. It's your choice to choose. Now, some people wait until there's a pandemic or an epidemic or some kind of situation before they do something. You can just pretend there's a situation, right? So I pretended.
You visualize.
Yeah. Imagine that, you don't have that anymore. So I often look at, some things to help, right? My wife is a wonderful singer, and the missing link was me. I was a terrible singer. So I said, let me go but I can speak, right? I can speak. So how about if I utilize my speaking to improve it so I can get a little closer to her, right? And I said, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky, right? I can speak it and sing it, right? And there's and then understand what it means differently from someone who does sing well. And then I can go and do research on things. By the way, that is a research project that I ended up getting funded for, because I had the audacity to choose something that was different. And another project, I won't go into the details, but it was doing something for the vegan food, some kind of better tasting science behind it, because they know I won't do GMO and stuff like that. But I'm a meat eater. I eat meat and vegetables. Why did you choose me? Well, if you're willing to eat the stuff you make, then, and this is my friend, right? And so amongst my friends, Vindy and others, and another friend that his name is Keith, got me involved with cannabis. And I don't, if had I not gone on this journey of the craziness, I wouldn't have touched on the cannabis. And it was like, did you try any? No, I didn't use any cannabis. I was simply going in there as a scientist about the extraction, right? You just do things differently. No one's stopping you. No one's judging you. And even if they are judging you, it doesn't matter, right? Just, you want to do something, go do it, right? No one's stopping you. And that is probably the biggest message I want you to have for your listeners today. But I could give you 10 things, right, to make a difference in your life, right? 10 things. Number one is get rid of the ego. Really, right? Get rid of the ego. Remember that we did not run out of stones, before the Stone Age ended. We ended the Stone Age for ourselves, and there was plenty of rocks and boulders and pebbles everywhere. Okay? So number two, you're not so relevant unless you solve other people's problems. Now you're relevant to them, and that's what matters, right? So lesson number two, right? Relevancy when you solve other people's problems. Number three is create an unforgettable experience for the people around you, right? That's just a mindset. Go in there and create an unforgettable experience. Number four, stop thinking you have all the time in the world, because that is what gets you in trouble. You don't have all the time in the world, right? And so take care of every moment, right? By making sure you know that. Number five is laugh and smile. We did some of that today, right? All right. Number six is interpret the lyrics of songs that are out there differently and make it close to you, right? Make it meaningful to you and relevant to your life, just like I did with the Crazy song. Or Imagine, right? Yeah, change that, okay? And then lesson number six is eat healthy. If you eat healthy, things will work a little better. Reduce the inflammation, and it won't hurt so much. It may not hurt at all, right? And lesson number seven is do something nice for people close to you. Yeah, do something nice for them. It doesn't have to come at a cost, right? And so then number eight, doing something nice for people. Number nine, for me, I pray often. I sometimes do it with my eyes open. Sometimes I do it with my eyes closed. But I pray in front of my children. I show them the communication with someone, something that, an energy, a power that's greater than me. I'm not all that important, right? So make sure you do that. All right. And meal time before meals is a great time to kind of do that. And then number 10 is don't just tell people. Don't just tell your wife you love her. Don't just tell your children you love them. Don't just tell your friends you love them. Do tell them though. But then more importantly is show them. Show them with your daily actions, right? Many times during the day. Take every moment, show that it's valuable. If you can do that, right, then life, there's no other problems, right? You just kind of, you don't get bored either. You're solving other people's problems because now you're relevant. Batman did that. Spider-Man did that. Superman did that, right? So yeah, you kind of become like a superhero in their eyes, and you don't have to be a superhero for everyone. Just those that are close to you. And then
someone compare you with Batman, right?
Yeah, someone did.
Someone, you with Tony Stark.
You're like a stalker. You read everything. Right?
Well, you got to do your research before you interview someone.
Oh, wow.
Well,
you really
the way I look at this.
Oh.
No, the way I look at this is if you guys respect me enough to give me your time to come to this podcast, I should at least do my homework, to dig deep and to see, how much information there are there. Because the last thing I want is to repeat questions that have been asked before, or not knowing something that you have said before, right? And I think that's mutual respect for me.
That's really good. I mean, that's unusual, Aaron. Usually I have been interviewed by people who don't maximize that interview, and they do ask me questions that have been asked before, and which is fine, they do it. But you're different. What did you just do? You raised the standard. You raised the bar for yourself. It didn't matter about anything else, right? And then you will leave people with an unforgettable experience because no one asked this question before. So that's what it takes for us to make our lives interesting. Right? And if we all do that,
one of your 10 steps.
Yeah, then if we all do that, right, it'll just be fun, right? Yeah.
Hey, I want to ask you, like I said, I've got many questions, but we're going to limit the time today. I'm aware that you're studying AI. I don't know whether you're finished yet. You did it with Harvard. Are you worried with AI and, all the algorithm behind it? Our views and our lenses are getting narrower and narrower because of social media, chamber. We're only getting fed content that we want to see and we want to be associated with. And how do we tackle that?
Isn't that interesting, right? The world of AI. There's the dark side, right? It could go dark easily, right? People have talked about that. But then let's talk about how a dentist gets tired. After your first patient, you start going downhill from there. You get tired. And they've actually measured that your last patient, you're bound to make more mistakes. Regardless of your experience level, you get tired. Us human beings get tired. And so AI has a place because it leads to precision. It's going to happen anyway. AI is going to happen anyway. And let's talk about AI from a world of people and culture and that Nokia experience, right? That we utilized earlier. Is if you knew that making these choices would destroy the jobs within that company and ruin all those lives, AI could help you see that so that you don't treat people or you don't put them into power where they're going to hurt others. And imagine if AI could detect and even help you to see that in yourself, like a self-help AI, so that you could say, wow, I'm being a terrible narcissist, right, to my colleagues, my peers, as a family person, right? Other than going to work every day, I come home and I ruin people's lives. If you could see that before others see it, self-help AI, then those people could change, right? And you could elevate yourself. What I did, right? In the sense that, not that I was a narcissist, but I was looking at my life from a different lens and I made myself change. Well, imagine if AI could help you see that. or help see where our decisions would lead us if we continue to use coal in the world, or we continue to burn fossil fuels. What would happen? Do we have another Earth? The AI will say, there is no other Earth. This is the last chance. This is permanent. You keep doing this, you will blow yourself up, right? It's like, wow, right? So AI could help us, and it could help a dentist. Knowing that they're tired and they're going to make mistakes, you've already worked past it. You can prevent that from happening. So there's the bright side of the AI, but everyone looks at the dark side oftentimes, right? And says, oh, this will be what happens. It's neither one or the other. In the world, there are people who have studied organizational psychology who didn't have the AI side, which is really called people analytics, right? And looking at the data sets. Is if you just treated everything with an Excel sheet, have the columns. And if we were using music, we say John Bon Jovi, 3 names, a first, a middle, and the last name. But then you look at Lady Gaga, and then the spreadsheet goes crazy because it's like, what happened to the middle name? Do we put NA there? And so we import into data sets and we get very confused. And then you run into Madonna. No last name, no middle name. What's that, right? Or some artists, composers and songwriters, they get married and they change their name, right? Well, that's going to mess up your Excel sheet. But with the right kind of programming, from SQL to perhaps Python, where you have this database, and you could just go in there and change it. Because if you had 1 million employees or 1 million individuals, you could change how you tackle the problem. And why we need AI, because in the future, a lot of the problems are not problems-based solutions, right? They don't have a solution. They're paradoxes, conundrums, which have many different solution sets, different outcomes. For the human being, we're very creative. We can complement it with precision and accuracy to improve the outcome of the outcome, right? So that is how I see AI. So knowing that's going to be the case, like knowing there's going to be COVID, right? If I know, then what I want to do is I want to be there for my children, enable them to learn the Cantonese and the traditional Chinese, but also the English, but also what is the heart and essence of being an American is, and what is the value of freedom. And I want to intertwine that into their decision-making very early on, knowing that in the future, because we study what exists right now, is that education keeps teaching the industrial age. That's the wrong age. Wrong age, my man. It's this wrong age. Let's go. We're in the space age. That's what we're in right now, right? And so if we keep doing that, what is going to be the outcome, right? Men and women started living longer, past 100 years, living longer. And as they lived longer, they realized something, is that they don't really want to be next to that person that they chose. And they start thinking about how can they, for a man, you peak, right? And then so it's all downhill from here. So then infidelity and all that nasty stuff. Now here's the moment. You chose somebody else. Now your wife leaves you. You hurt your children. Now imagine you are now on your deathbed. You're in the hospital. Your mouth is dry. You'd love to have a sip of water. But because of your infidelity, no one is there to give you a sip of water. And that's how you go, right? So suddenly, just using imagery and a little example of how that is, you start saying, was it worth it? Should I have done that, right? And we should think about our consequences. AI is written by humans. The program is written by human beings. So as long as human beings, I view human beings as good. I view that there are givers, there are takers, but the takers might be once upon a time givers who then suddenly may have decided I've been hurt so much and now I have to take, right? So they're contaminated. Unless there's psychopaths, right? Then, there's those. But outside of that bell curve, right? You've got your givers, your takers, and then you have your matchmakers, people who bring people together. But if you looked at statistically who does best in medical school, right? The people who are givers actually are the ones who score the lowest on the academics. They're so busy, even the engineers, others, they're so busy helping other people that they never get to their own things. They're giving it away. So they're not the top performers. So you say, wow, givers, that's very unsuccessful. I don't want to be a giver, right? Unless if you guessed, does a taker rise to the top? No, because they take and they do well for a moment and everyone realizes they're a taker. So then they don't let them go.
People see through it.
Right? So that's what the psychology, but also the data sets show us that. And then the matchmakers must be at the top. Nope, not the matchmakers. It's givers again. The givers are at the very top and the bottom. It's just that there are givers who realize that they could give. Like right now, I'm giving an hour of my time, 100%. But that doesn't mean the next hour I give out the same thing. I can actually silo the time that I give and make sure that 1 hour, if I promise to give, I give it all my all, right? And that type of giver, if you can get into that mindset, then those are the givers that are at the top as well. So you can be a successful giver if you start quarantining and highlighting and weighing what is it worth to give. So I try to give to other givers, right? I try to give to people I can see that, first of all, they're my friends. So I started running an experiment and doing that. But with the AI data sets, I could see how my decisions created fruits. Without AI, well, then it would just be once upon a time, I guess, a gut feeling. But with AI, I could look at the data. I could see, like in a company, I could see doing a 360 evaluation, what your peers think of you with your interpersonal skills. Are you the type of boss that puts teams against each other so that they kill each other and you take whoever wins? Or are you one that nourishes so that everybody can be a solid community? And it's hard to beat teams, right? Because an individual, you can have someone become a star, but then they could be a selfish star. And you see that all the time in history. But if you create teams, these teams have so much more capability. So fostering teams, leveraging AI in a good way, changing the lens of your camera, and of course, those 10 things, I think that about sums it up in an essence of where I've gotten myself to. And in May, you'll get to see me run this extra experiment, which is to bring all this I just shared with you into Wharton. Now, Wharton is where they're all CEOs. They're all primed. It's called the Advanced Management Program, but they don't have AI. And if AI is so important in the future, and climate change is so important in the future, we're prefacing this before I'll have to change my talk, I guess, for the 15th and 16th, right? But, that's not a problem. Martin Luther King did not have "I have a dream" in his talk. When he wrote it, scribbling to the last moment. And then when he went up there, he says, "I have a dream." Like, it's just like, just be creative, right? So you just be creative. And that's something that AI cannot do, right? AI is not creative. It does what we ask it to do. So we need to be very precise. It doesn't grow tired, right? It has that capability, but it also has the dark side. So I'm going to let you know about the dark side is that if someone gave you 99.999, so 5 nines, 99.999, which means that's what's left over is 0.001. And if you took 365 days a year, just to create a number, times 24 hours in a day, times 60 minutes per every hour, times 60 seconds for every minute, you come up with something like 31.5 billion. 31.5 billion. And if you multiply by 0.001, you can knock off the number and create 31,500 seconds, right? Which then translates, if you break it down, to 575 minutes or so. I might be wrong with one of the digits, but generally speaking, that is not a lot of protection. If someone protected you 99.999, and then there's only a flawed error of 0.001, it depends on what you're going to protect against. An example of the power of AI is that it could crack your iPhone 4-digit code, passcode, could be cracked in a blink of an eye, 1 second, right? So because there's only those fixed combinations, right? 0 to 9 times, so that's 10 digits, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, right? So that's, that's easy for a system to be cracked. So if you expand your digits, if you knew that, you could change the outcome. You could easily make more digits for your password. Or another way would be change the 0 to 9 to include all the keys of the keyboard, including uppercase and lowercase, right? And then have all the exclamation symbols and other things like that. Have full ASCII. But then you could also have two-factor authentication, right? So that your phone, which is with you, could verify it must be that, and you could level up and protect further. What did we just do? Knowledge. Just like changing the lens and how I did it with my kids, is knowledge of the future, know the potential bad, know about that, and then think about how to counter it. The fastest way to help your company avoid pressing on those spam emails, and that's what led to the Target case and Home Depot cases where they came in and took everybody's credit card numbers. Well, fastest way is to create your own spam emails inside of the company, send it out to everybody, and then, at least you clicked on our own email, which is, you shouldn't be doing that. And suddenly everybody, it's like having a fire drill. And so if you have fire drills in your life, have fire drills and other things you do, right? Then we can it's a very inexpensive way to change the outcome. Just make believe, right? And then run the experiment.
And that was how Dr. Olson was born too. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. Just before we wrap up our session, I wanted to ask you about these 3 qualities that you mentioned with Dr. Olson. You mentioned about academic excellence, kindness, positive sum game under your institute.
Wow, you've been to the website too. This is impressive. True hacker.
How should we fight?
Right.
True hacker, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we talked a little bit about academic excellence already. We shouldn't just be focusing on numbers. We should really be looking beyond the academics performance. But kindness and positive sum game. I mean, if we look at Ukraine and Russia, I don't think we're looking at the earth as one per se. We're looking at one country. I guess leading up to this point, it wasn't a random aggression. It was years of politics and years of foreign affairs, which led us up to this point, right? But kindness and positive sum game. How can we foster this with the population, with the next generation? What are your thoughts?
Well, and you start thinking about a visual of many ships, right? We're all on our individual ships, but the reality is we're on the same Earth. So we are really one ship, right? But if you start thinking that you have a lot of time in the world and, you want to make the most of your life and we mess up. But when you start thinking about, we don't have a lot of time, maximize every moment, right? You change your outlook, your lens. So the purpose of letting kids know that kindness is important is when they meet me as their coach, they first ask, you can't be the same guy who has the 30-something patents. Why would you care about helping me, right? That's the first shock they have, right? And when their parents asked me, or when I went into being teaching for that year, they said it can't be, right? You would be someone who's very busy. And I said, well, we all have that one moment in time, right? Which is another song I suggest people to listen to that Whitney Houston sang, right? That one moment in time. If we want that one moment in time, we can do it, right? And kindness is what defines our humanity. And our understanding that we're all on one ship, that we're all stakeholders, and we don't have another planet to replace, then suddenly you start valuing things very, very differently. And positive sum game is to let them also realize that someone doesn't have to lose for someone to win. Everybody can win. We all win if we care. So that show that I do, the Ask Dr. Chiu with YE, right, with Vindy, changes people's mindsets because they say, I'm that American who shares 2 hours of his time every Wednesday to talk about these health issues and answering people's questions. But you don't have a practice in Hong Kong. You don't really practice here. Why do you do it? Right? Why do you do it? Well, does everything have to be because of a zero-sum game, right? Does it have to be this? I'm doing it, as I shared today, for my daughters to see me, and that might be a made-up reason to keep me going, right? But, just like, whatever, right? But stop thinking for a reason to do something. Do it for a positive sum future. Without our next generation, without kindness, you know what will happen? Ukraine is the wheat center for Europe. Do you know what this period of time just did? Right? You know what it just did? It caused a lot of problems. That ripple is going to come back and we have to pay for it. People are going to eat that wheat and they're going to get sick. COVID, because we didn't use the pH 10 soap, which, there's plenty of videos about that too. Now that's out of the bag and people got infected, there's something called long COVID, brain fog, liver problems, all kinds of stuff that we now no longer have a problem on our hands. We have a paradox on our hands. So we went from a problem into a paradox that requires so many things. And guess what scientists tend to do? They like to work on shiny things. People like to work on the shiny stuff. And I have a quote about having the cake and eating it too. Most people say that's not possible, but I say yes, it is. If you choose a cake that's not shiny, and you work on that, and then you can eat it too. But then you're eating something that's not shiny. You're taking something that's not. But sometimes the universe is a very strange thing. Some of the projects I worked on were not favored, but they became famous, right? And that's why we have this thing. So let the accident happen. Don't chase it. Stop chasing the shiny things. Just work on what has value in your heart as opposed to what is valued out there. All right?
And like you said, don't be afraid to be the crazy one.
Yeah. So, sometimes a little crazy is good. Yeah. Right.
And thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. I learned a ton from you today, and thank you so much for taking out your valuable time to share your perspectives, the 10 lessons that we should all learn and live our life. I hope you guys are keeping well. Say hi to your families for me, and looking forward to our sessions in about a month's time.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Good night.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.